Alright, so at this point in development, I have the movement and aiming animation set up in blueprints. So to start with, I created a blend space for our locomotion. Using our speed and direction, we can determine what animation to play. So while we are full speed moving forward, we have this jog animation. When we are in the positive 90-degree direction, we are moving to the right. At negative 90, we move to the left. At negative or positive 180, we move backwards. I then take this blend space and use that to create our locomotion state. So when the player begins the game, we have this begin play montage that will play. Once that's finished, we enter into the grounded state where we can move in any direction. And we use our blend space to create that animation. At any point when the player presses the space bar, we will go into the jumping state. So we'll have like a start jump. Once we reach the apex of the jump, we play an apex animation. Then once we enter into the falling state, we play the landing animation, and then we go back to grounded. I found that if we enter the transition or do the transition to the apex at point 1 and the transition to grounded at point 9, that seems to look best here. Alright, so we then cache that locomotion, and so long as we're not aiming, we'll just play that. But if we are in the aiming state, we need to blend that animation with our aiming offset using the pitch of our aim, and then display that to the screen for the user. But yeah, so that's kind of a high-level overview of this graph. After this, we will probably need a hit, do blending for if the character is hit by an enemy, and those animations, and then some type of death montage thing or something kind of animation. But this gets us what I need for right now. Alright, so then here's an overview of the event graph. Most of this is pretty standard. A few things that I added to suit my needs were I have my player character class, so I have to cast a pawn to that to get whether we're in the begin play state, so that way we know whether to play the little montage at the beginning. And this is aiming method in the base character class to determine whether or not we are aiming. Yeah, so I'll run it now. You can see that it's starting to actually look like a game. So we have this begin play montage here, and there's a little glitch there in the beginning, but so we move forward, we move backwards, we move left or right, and then we can play any blend of those in between. We can jump, move around, we can aim and move. We can no longer jump while we're aiming. When we aim, the character mesh will rotate, so that way the gun will face towards the center of the screen and line up with the crosshair. And yeah, and we still rotate around the character, so all that's starting to look pretty good. Then going over the code, didn't change a whole lot, cleaned up a few things. I made the movement methods here virtual because I need to overload them for the player character, because I have to do a check whether or not we're in the begin play state. I added this rotator for the aiming, so to rotate the mesh while we're aiming. I have a pointer to the mesh, and I have this boolean for whether or not we're in air. Here's a look at the code for when we are zoomed in. We just add the mesh rotation using this add local rotation, and then when we zoom out, we're no longer aiming, we have to multiply that by -1, so that way we rotate the character back. And I went through and did a bunch of these asserts instead of doing the if conditionals, a little cleaner, and we can optimize those conditionals out in release mode. And for the rotation, I found that 20 in the yaw and 0 in both the pitch and the roll seem to be good for now. Once I get a crosshair, we'll fine tune this. Yeah, so then player character class, I then overloaded these methods here, and then I have a pointer to this montage. Currently I'm just using this to get the duration of the montage, and then I update whether or not we're going to begin play in the tick. So I just subtract the number of seconds from the duration. Once we reach 0, we exit the begin play state. It's not ideal, really. The player character should have multiple states, so we have like a begin state, active state, and an end state. And then when we're in the begin state, we'll have this in the tick. Then once we enter into play state, this is removed from the tick method, and stuff like that. But so for now, this is working. That's something to do when I start really polishing this up. But yeah, this is otherwise, it's not a whole lot. Most of the same things, except I have these checks for whether or not we're in the begin play. And I did change, this is kind of my little rant, in the move forward. I did change to reduce at least one of the temporary objects we have to create, because otherwise we're creating like 100 bytes worth of temporary object here, which is the way like the third person demo has this, and then pretty much most of the tutorials will show you this, because they just copy and paste in the third person template and explain it, which is fine. But you get the rotation, then you create this other F rotator using just this rotation's yaw, and then we have to create this matrix rotation matrix to then get the direction. It's kind of crazy, but this way we can do these math operations and save having to create an extra variable or extra object. So that's something that's 12 bytes we don't have to create every million times we're using move forward. And yeah, ideally we wouldn't even have to do these math operations, and we could just get a like yaw rotation rotator from our controller, but I'll have to do a derived class in the player controller or something, so that way we can just create that rotator. But that's something to do later on. But yeah, so that pretty much sums up everything I did for this animation. In the next devlog, I will have a new like gun asset in for the player character. So I'll change out the gun and then start creating the gun class and all that. All right.